Hi, Anna. Lovely to see you.
And you, Paula. Good morning. Bore da.
It's really great to speak to you this morning about the work that we're doing at the NMC, and I know that you've been involved really closely with this work. So really happy to speak to you. I wonder if you could kick off, Anna, with just telling us a bit about yourself, what you do, your role, and how you've been involved in the review of advanced practice.
Yes, of course. I'm delighted to be involved. So I'm Dr. Anna Jones. I'm a registered adult nurse and I'm a reader in advanced practice at Cardiff University School of Healthcare Sciences. I'm the programme manager for the MSc in Advanced Healthcare Practice, one of the two MSc Advanced Practice programmes that we offer. And I'm also the chair of the Association of Advanced Practice Educators UK. My involvement in the NMC work was that I was nominated by the Chief Nursing Office for Wales to represent Wales as the Advanced Practice Nurse Advisor from September 2023 until this year. And I was one of 5 nursing advisors joining a team of nurses, midwives and NMC staff in developing the regulation of advanced practice. So I guess my role as chair of the Association of Advanced Practice Educators UK has also enabled me to support the work of the NMC in terms of the regulation of advanced practice, with API, the Association of Advanced Practice Educators UK, being represented on the steering committee, and we're being represented extremely ably by Dr. Helen Rushforth from the University of Southampton. And that has meant that we are able to feed back into our membership, and we have over 100 HEIs, higher education institutions, that are part of API, and then can take their views back through to you as the NMC to feed into the regulatory review.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, and it's it's been really great to work with you and with the other nursing and midwifery advisors over the course of this project. And you all have such varied experiences and expertise, which has been really valuable in having the broad range of perspectives on the work that we're doing and the challenge that you bring. Because I love that kind of critical friend challenge. And I think also having yourself and Colette, who was our advisor for Scotland, from an academic perspective, thinking about higher education and what regulation means for higher education is really important as we move forward, I think.
Yeah, I think as HEIs from an academic perspective, I think we can support the implementation of the principles of advanced practice really well. We're well positioned to do that in terms of the students that we support and teach and nurture, the employers that we engage with as part of that. We have access to commissioning bodies so that we can explain to them as well. So I think there's a breadth of individuals and committees and bodies that we can approach to enable the principles of advanced practice to be better understood by those who may be new to the concept of principles and of regulation. But I also think as universities and in terms of education, we may need in future with the regulation of advanced practice need to adapt curricula. And so this is a really good starting point for us to enable us to have those conversations around what would need to change in future should regulation be imposed. And therefore we need to look at our curricula.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point in terms of, the principles specifically as we prepare for launch on the 10th of June and the work that we've done in getting those principles ready, but also thinking about how they do apply to HEIs, or how HEIs can support their implementation across the wider sector. And I think you're right, it is about preparing for regulation and what comes next, which is those standards, isn't it? And we know that it's coming. So it's actually, hopefully these principles are really helpful in getting people thinking about what's coming down the line and helping them to prepare.
I think the principles are a really good starting point as an introductory point to regulation. It feels like a soft launch, if you like. People having that discussion and that discourse going on around what would it mean to have regulation in place. to have standards, to have proficiencies. And I think for me, the principles, particularly for employers, are really valuable in that they outline and delineate what the responsibility of the employer is to protect the public through using the principles of advanced practice.
Yeah, I think that's right, and we've had a lot of really positive feedback on that aspect, that it kind of, it sets out our expectations for employer organisations, and for perhaps some of those smaller organisations, within primary care, general practice, who perhaps haven't had as detailed kind of governance around supporting advanced practice as potentially secondary care big trusts have. That's been received really positively and is seen as really helpful, I think.
I think so too, and I think there's a huge benefit in having the principles here, because we're beginning to introduce them to a new market, as it were, of individuals who need that support, who want to develop their advanced practice skills or their advanced practice workforce. But this has enabled a conversation to start around that, to ensure that they're on the right path to enable people to be protecting the public within their roles as advanced practitioners.
Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? Thinking about kind of, using the principles to influence that space, and with those providers who are just at the beginning of thinking about what advanced practice means for them. I had a conversation recently with someone about ambulance trusts, for example, and advanced practitioners working as first responders in ambulance trusts, and some of those organisations are just beginning their development of thinking, well, what do we need in place to support these individuals and maintain public protection, patient safety, as you say. So,
and also I think, with the ones that are established currently, for them to begin thinking about whether they need to revise or relook at their job descriptions. Do the job descriptions marry with the actual scope of practice? That also may have implications for pay banding and career progression frameworks. So I think there's a lot of work yet to be done, but it's the starting point. It's the point where you start thinking about what needs to be done to ensure that this rolls out really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we know, I know we've had many discussions around, this is not the first time we've been on this bus. And actually, as nurses, both of us as nurses, feeling that actually we need to do this now. We've been talking about it for a long time, and actually we need to just crack on with it, don't we?
Yeah, we do need to get on with it. I think there's an urgency now from a public protection point of view, but also from people knowing where they stand in relation to career frameworks. We have all of the 4 frameworks across the UK in the different devolved countries. Some are multidisciplinary, others are not. So therefore, those conversations are ongoing, and it's really, really, really constructive in terms of how people are beginning to think about how other professions within the multidisciplinary frameworks need to be thinking about, regulation, etc. We're aware that the professional bodies have currently decided not to pursue regulation, but that doesn't mean that the changing landscape won't enable that in future. And we need to have that continued discussion and open discourse with these individuals to ensure that we're very transparent and open around where we go with the regulation of advanced practice.
Yeah, I think that's right, and the group that we have within the review with the other joint regulators, both the professional regulators and the systems regulators, has been really helpful, hasn't it, in terms of kind of that wider thinking and implications for other professionals who work in an advanced practice level, and thinking about potentially kind of the unintended consequences of doing slightly different things. But I suppose we're all on a journey, aren't we? And we know that nurses are the biggest professional group working at advanced practice, and we've heard particularly from that group that it kind of makes sense for the Nursing Midwifery Council to start off this work.
I think you're right. We are on a journey, and Rome wasn't built in a day. This is a stepwise approach to actually getting somewhere. And we're well aware of the role boundary tensions that exist currently, and there might be more of those as nursing and midwifery moves into regulation and other professions maybe don't. But it's having that clarity and that honesty and that open discussion to ensure that, responsibilities are recognised, that roles are recognised, and that we continue to collaborate between different professions. Those tensions around role boundaries, there will be scopes of practice that do cross over, but it's having the ability to overcome those, and the principles will help that discussion, I think, before we get to regulation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's really important, to continue those open and honest conversations, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of employers as well, having those discussions now around what scopes of practice should and could look like, that will help them, I think, prepare for future, 3 or 4 years down the line, as they work through their workforce plans for the coming few years, how the advanced practice will fit into all of that, and how the principles may help them work out which their strategies and their decision making and direction of travel.
Yeah, and you mentioned scope of practice, and actually, we know that the work that we're doing in the advanced practice review, there are a lot of different parts, and we will go on to develop standards of proficiency and education program standards. But actually, I know that we were planning to do that next after we launched the principles, but we're going to focus on advanced practice as part of the review of revalidation and the code. And in many senses, looking at that scope of practice first within revalidation is no bad thing, is it? And having those conversations with professionals, with employers, with others around scope of practice and what that might look like early on, potentially before we get to the standards, might be helpful.
Yeah, and I think the principles, nurses are the larger proportion of the advanced practitioners out there. But we're quickly being followed by other professions who are increasing their advanced practitioners. And I think, the public recognition, we've got a public definition and a professional definition. And by having those, that will help with reinforcing the principles. But it will also raise the way that people look and the way the public look at other professions and their understanding of what when they step into advanced practice, what that means as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really important. The NMC's primary role is public protection, and we've had that at the centre of all the work we're doing. But we do need to, and we heard loud and clear, didn't we, that the public need to understand these roles and what their expectations should be and what the kind of standard they should be expecting with the roles.
And that harmonisation, I think, across professional bodies is really important. Even if we can't agree regulation across all bodies, it's a huge challenge. I think harmonisation and an understanding and appreciation is absolutely key.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna, I know we're talking about the principles today, but I wonder, because I know that you're the chair of API and you have lots of conversations with your colleagues and with other kind of colleagues in clinical practice and research and all sorts of roles. And I just wanted to get a sense of what your thoughts are on, the whole agenda around additional regulation for advanced practice. And we've talked about public protection, which is the reason that we're doing the work. But just from your conversations, what's the feeling out there about what the work that the NMC is doing?
I think there are several different perspectives on what the NMC is doing and regulation. But I think as nurses, particularly, as you said, we've been on this bus a number of times. And I think from an API perspective, we were glad to see this piece of work come to the fore again and actually get as far as we have. We would like to see it continue, possibly at a faster rate, but that's a different challenge and that's a different conversation from today. But I think from an API perspective, it's a positive stance and a positive step forward in terms of the regulation of advanced practice. I think what I'm hearing is that there are more incidents of people working outside of scope and not understanding their scope, and therefore that is a public protection issue. So therefore there is a drive for wanting regulation. But that's not from all perspectives, and there is some negativity, and there are others who have different views. So I do tend to hear a lot of everything, and I think the importance for me would be to work with the other governing bodies or regulatory bodies to ensure that we continue that dialogue, because people do not work in silos clinically. Whichever environment you work in clinically, you do not work in a silo. You work within a multi-professional team. Whether you're a lone worker and referring on, you have to have that understanding of that scope. So there is a positivity about regulation of advanced practice, so you know who you're referring to and who that referral comes from, etc., in clinical practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I completely agree on the kind of open dialogue, and the ongoing conversation is really key to this work as we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, I wonder what you think might be the opportunities and challenges with additional regulation. We perhaps touched on some of those throughout the conversation. So thinking more broadly about additional regulation, but specifically around the principles.
I think that the positive elements around the principles are for employers. I think there's clear guidance there as to what advanced practice may mean as an employer, and that can be taken forward then to enable them to support their employees within advanced practice roles, and those who want to step into those advanced practice roles, in terms of workforce planning for the future, etc. I think there are some rubs, some challenges in that there may be pressure for other professionals and professions to align to advanced practice. I think pharmacists in particular have a very clear advanced practice agenda there. There are other up-and-coming professions such as paramedicine who have increasing advanced practitioners. There could be a push for multi-professional regulation, which will come down the line, I guess. And needing further consultation, as we've discussed. Role boundary tensions when you're actually working in clinical practice. There might be, a rub if you're working with somebody who seems to be working at the same level as you, but actually maybe not banded as the same level as you, and don't have the same title. We need to ensure that there are clear roles and responsibilities and collaboration between those practitioners. From a HEI perspective, I think we would need to consider, with the principles are a starting point for us to have that conversation around whether we will need to consider changes to curricula should regulation come into force. So that's a really good starting point for us. And it's a good point for us to go out to meet with our colleagues, clinical colleagues, our students, our alumni, around how we can support using the principles as a baseline before regulation appears. So that I think that the principles are a very good starting point, a soft launch into regulation on lots of different elements.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think, I think thinking about education standards and understanding what goes into meeting those education standards, we need to think about the amount of time and effort that goes into that as we move to that point, which is in the future. But I don't think you can underestimate the amount of work and energy required in doing that. In my previous role as head of education and QA at the NMC, and kind of being in that role when the post-registration standards were updated, and actually, having those conversations and being really supportive as the professional regulator, supporting universities in order to be able to do what's required, because it is quite a detailed process, isn't it, if you've never done it before?
It is, and that, there's a few years lead in by the looks of things in terms of the timeline, and that is helpful because we can then align that with revalidation events that occur once every approximately 5 years within HEIs. And so we can tie all of that work in and look to the future. And we can then take into account, the workforce planning demands as well, where we've got programs we have commissioned students, etc. So all of that will help us align our programs and revalidation to ensure that we're not doing bits of work here, there, and everywhere in silos that don't then add up to a cohesive whole, a comprehensive package, and a comprehensive program of education.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a prompt or a reminder to me that actually we need to, and I need you to prompt and remind me as well that we need to start having these conversations about, with universities about in the kind of run up to this, and it is going to take time. And actually, it's again that open dialogue, communicating what we're doing and when is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the webinars are going to be very helpful for clinicians, for employers, etc., so that they have an understanding of what they're coming into, but they'll be very important and helpful for us as a reminder from a HEI perspective. I'm very fortunate, as is Colette, that we've been completely involved and immersed in this. We share those with our colleagues across the UK. But the webinars are a very good point to bring in those colleagues so that they're fully aware of what the situation is and how the program and project is ongoing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, it's been really lovely talking to you, Anna, and having your perspective on the work. And I've really enjoyed working with you and enjoying continuing to work with you in whatever capacity that might be. But we've still got a long road ahead of us, aren't we? But we're on the journey. We've hit our first milestone with the launch of the principles. So yeah, really excited and looking forward to working with you as we progress through the review. So thank you.
Thank you too. Likewise, Paula. Thank you very much.